Welcome to Cartography. That's Kip.
That's Rush.
And today we're going to take this ND2 Miata out for a drive and give you our thoughts on Mazda's iconic sports car.
First impression right off the bat, God, the transmission's good. It is so good. The shifts are very short, very precise. It's easy to slot it in exactly where you want. So the next thing you notice is the motor. It's not impressive, but it is plenty, and it kind of gets out of the way of you driving.
So what do you think about the pedal placement in this car?
I'll be honest, and I don't know if this is just because in my Viper it's very different. I think the gas pedal is a little bit too far recessed from the brake pedal for my taste. It feels, even though these pedals are close together, it feels like I have to move my foot farther than in the Viper, if that makes sense.
Do you think it's because of how you're just not canted towards the middle
That
of the
might
car?
be it, yes.
Because in the same thing in the 993, I'm slightly towards the transmission of the car.
Yep.
And then you were even more so in the Viper. Here, we're actually straight on, which is what modern cars give you. This is what happens when you drive a car that's 20 years newer than what we drive every day. I think for a new driver, I mean, this is a great baseline. Basically a great way to start learning how to drive a manual, I would say.
Yep. If this is a car that rewards you, the closer you are to the limits, and they've really perfectly matched the ratios in this gearbox to the motor. It is not a super powerful motor. It's got enough, but when you're on it and if you're at redline and you shift, it's not bringing you all the way back down the rev range.
When I drive this car, the word that comes to mind is balance. And I feel like any good sports car, balance is there. You have to have the balance between everything for it to be a full package. And I think this really does come together so well.
And the big thing about this is it wouldn't make a great beginner sports car, but if you're used to driving sports cars and you get into it, within a few minutes you really, really feel comfortable with it.
And it's still good.
Totally.
It's not just for beginners, it's for everyone, which I love about this car. But it's a great everyday sports car. It's a great fourth sports car. It's just a great car to have in your garage.
Absolutely. And this is something where, on this twisty road, we're getting up to 55, maybe 60 miles an hour. And it feels like we're just absolutely up its guts, which is great.
Yeah, it feels like you're pushing the car, maybe not 10 tenths, but you're up there. Versus in a modern, overpowered sports car, this would be 2 tenths.
Absolutely.
And it takes away from the engagement, right?
Absolutely. And but you don't feel like you're going slow.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. In fact, Miatas have this thing about them because they're so light and they just defy physics that you're going 40, but it feels like you're going 80. And
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Versus you drive a modern BMW, you feel like you're going 60, but you're actually going 80. It dumbs it down, I feel like.
Yep.
It takes away so much of that engagement, versus this amplifies everything. For a driver experience, I mean, it's such a rewarding car to drive in every single setting.
It really is. I mean, it doesn't beat you up at all. It doesn't feel super hardcore or anything like that. But it gives you all of the things that you could possibly want out of a driver's car. If you like something that handles well, if handling is your priority, then a Miata is just as good as basically anything else that you could get.
This is a really good option for an everyday car to just get some fun on your way to the office, or if you want to decompress when you leave after a hard day. This car just put a smile on my face every single day.
Yeah, it's almost an impossible car not to love. One thing that I will level against this as a criticism is the steering. While it gives you it's got a good weight, you can feel when it loads up to a certain extent. I don't know if it's as talkative as it should be. This is a car that's so light it almost doesn't need power steering at all.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't give you quite the level of instant communication and level of detail that you would want.
I agree with you 100%. So the steering is one of my criticisms. I had, mainly 3 faults with the car, and the steering was one of them. And for me, it gives you, as far as an electric assisted unit goes, I would say that the steering is actually very communicative compared to other cars. Mm-hmm. What it leaves out is texture. And I feel like this car, that's where its downfall is. I mean, the best way I can put it is with a good steering rack, 100% of the road should be going to your fingers.
Yep.
And in this car, I would say it's 85 to 90% gets to you.
I think, if you're somewhere without good windy roads, you'll never get the most out of this, whereas if you're in a Mustang or a Camaro, you will get more of it on your straight, boring roads. If you live anywhere with any kind of twisties, I feel like this is the clear choice.
I disagree with you, actually. And I think, and the reason I bring this up is I actually think it's one of the biggest charms of this car is because the ceiling is so low on this car, you can have fun with it in the city. I have these last few days, and I never felt like I had to ring it out to get there. But you can get closer to ringing it out in a city without endangering everybody on the road. I think this car, more so than a lot of cars that are high horsepower, you can utilize the joy of driving this car more often. So you can utilize the power more often in this car than you can in like a 500 horsepower car. And I think that's why this is a better city car than a muscle car.
I think you're wrong. I think if you're in a straight line, so this engine is very, very well matched to the car. When I'm driving, I'm not like, man, I wish I had 100 more horsepower. I don't think that. That's because when you're on a good road like this one, you're thinking about it. It's about the whole combined experience. When you're in a straight line, all you have is the engine and transmission. While the transmission is great, I think I would be underwhelmed if I lived somewhere with only straight roads. All right, your turn.
All right. It's fucking great, isn't it?
It's a great car. It's a great car.
If Jeff Goldblum was a car, he'd be a Miata.
Oh, absolutely. If you were a Dasani and you get in this, you come out of LaCroix.
Doesn't feel underpowered to me at all. Now again, Kip and I are different in the sense that this is more my bag. Like this is exactly kind of what I look for in a car, which is the right amount of power. And this car has the right amount of power for everything else because I look for balance.
Absolutely. And I actually agree with you. Even though I like power, I like something that can smoke those rear meats more readily. I think this engine is matched great to the, you almost prefer this to something that is, a rip snorting beast.
All right, so negatives. Okay, so I've mentioned the engine sound. We've talked about the steering. So in terms of the sound, it's fixable, right? The steering, you can't really, I don't know if you can fix that. Another complaint I have is the seat, actually. So right now the seat feels fine, but when I get out of the car after I've been driving it for a while, my lower back is always hurting, and it's because there's no lumbar support in these seats. I love this Revy engine because I can just feel like I can just be high speed or high revs all the time, and the engine can just handle it. It doesn't feel like it's about to break down. It doesn't feel like a Mustang.
Absolutely, and there's not that trade-off because a lot of high revving engines, there's basically nobody home below 4,000 RPM. In this, you could still get going. There's enough torque lower in the rev range.
And against the gearing helps out a lot.
It does,
right?
It really does.
With that torque. As far as another pro of this car, the top, like how you use the top and how quick it is to put up and down, it makes this car always top down accessible. Meaning, all of a sudden you feel like, okay, I want to put the top down. Stoplight, 5 seconds, you're done. You don't have to get out of the car to do it, so you don't have to plan ahead to use the top.
Yep.
And that, I feel like every convertible should be that way. Another thing I've noticed about this car, and I'm going to actually talk about this car compared to my 993. So, the 993, like in that air-cooled ethos, I feel like the ethos of the 993 is closer to this car than it is a modern 911.
I'll agree with that completely.
I feel like this car, now in terms of the driving dynamics and some of those things, they're going to be different, obviously.
Of course.
But in terms of the ethos of what the 993 is to me, I get that feeling in this car. Maybe it's not as special, but it gives me, again, most of that feeling of focused. It's only driver focused. It's only about the drive. It's only about balance and nothing else.
The 993 and prior, the 911 wasn't a spec sheet. It was a sports car in the truest sense of the word, where it was meant to be enjoyed. It was meant to be driven hard, and it was meant to give you an experience. If you pushed it, now they've gotten a little bit softer.
Bigger.
They've gotten bigger. They've gotten heavier. The numbers are more impressive, but have the cars actually gotten better to drive? And I would argue, no, they have not. Whereas this actually has gotten, it's one of the few cars where it's not only has better specs, but it's also more fun than the old cars were. There's no reason that you can't put this up against some of the most fun to drive cars that have ever existed.
And with these cars, it's worth, talking about the maintenance costs. The car itself is so much cheaper to maintain. The tires aren't as expensive as other cars that you might cross shop with this. The oil changes are not going to be as expensive. The oil change, if you do it yourself, is going to be even cheaper, right?
Yep.
Everything in this car is going to be much more affordable. And I think that's another really big benefit of this car versus something like a Cayman or a Boxster. So in terms of usability, Apple CarPlay, standard, it's fine. Bluetooth streaming, standard, it's fine. Hands-free, phone, it's fine. It does all of those things and it does it fine. One thing that I love is the cup holder solution. I think it is genius that they have, so the car has 2 cup holders. They're here behind me, and they're modular, meaning you can move them. You can take them out, take one out and put it here.
Oh.
Yeah, as he will demonstrate.
Oh my God, this is the smartest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, it does everything well enough to where I would actually consider using this car every single day, weather permitting.
Absolutely. This is a car that, as you drive it, as you look at the details, as you experience it, you realize that it was carefully designed and engineered for a human being with feelings rather than to look good on a brochure. The thing we haven't talked about yet is the looks.
Yes. I love it.
I think it looks fantastic. It's got some like F-type cues a little bit, but like shrunk down. It's got like just enough creases to be a little bit aggressive. It's got haunches in the front and the rear. It's got kind of a bulldog stance, but it's tiny, What
I would change in terms of the looks is I feel like they went a little bit more aggressive. I actually watched a little video on why they designed it the way they did.
Uh-huh.
They made it more aggressive because they found the Japanese executives found out what the stigma was with Miatas here in the U.S. in terms of the looks, and so they wanted to make it more aggressive. And so they went with these weird headlights that are more aggressive. They look fine.
I like them.
I say go happier.
I think that's fair. From a marketing standpoint, to sell more of them in America, I think they made the right call.
If I bought it, I'd put eyelashes on it. But as for a modern car, for any price point, the Miata should always be worth a look.
I couldn't agree with you more. Both of us are very cynical when it comes to new cars that are being produced right now. There are very, very few cars that make us excited. Almost none.
You can tell Mazda put in so much love in this car, and there's times when you should vote with your wallet, and this is one of them. The Miata should always be considered when it comes to sports cars because it just hits all of those check boxes so well, and you can feel the love. You can feel how much Mazda cares about this car. It does everything that you would want it to do. It has a couple of little faults, but most of them are fixable.
This is a vehicle that is very much greater than the sum of its parts, and every single thing that you interact with on this car is fun, is responsive, and it's one of those cars that when you get out of it, you're going to have a tough time peeling the smile off your face. I think if you like a good driver's car, give one of these a shot and tell me it's not worth twice the money they ask for it. In closing, those are our thoughts on the ND2 Miata. I think no matter who you are, if you are a driving enthusiast, this should be a car that you strongly consider. That's Rush.
That's Kip.
So don't forget to subscribe, to hit the like button, to hit the bell icon, because guess what? It's completely free. Just do it. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to hurt you. It doesn't cost anything. Just do it for us. I need it. Please.
We have 40 subscribers, so we'd like to get to 50.